Joined from London by Chris Doyle. He's a Middle East commentator. Chris, good to see you there here on the programme. Today's storming of Al-Aqsa, how provocative would you say that was?
Every time that you have tensions on Al-Aqsa, every time you have settlers, Jewish extremists going onto what they call Temple Mount, you definitely raise the temperature in this city. And if you really want to stir things up, this is where you do it. If you want to inflame, if you want to fan the flames of already existing tensions, which are so high, this is how you do it. And in tandem with that, of course, you have these marches every day on Jerusalem Day of settlers, of right-wing extremists, fully endorsed by the State of Israel, by the way, that go provocatively through the Old City, through the Muslim Quarter, where you frequently hear hate speech, genocidal language, death to the Arabs. They talk about burning your villages, Muhammad is dead. They also refer to having another Nakba. Many people believe and argue that that's actually happening in Gaza right at the moment. So Jerusalem is, without question, the city, the place where you can inflame and exacerbate. And there are, I'm afraid, politicians, political forces in Israel who want to do exactly this, because they have absolutely zero interest in seeing any form of ceasefire, any form of agreement between Israel and Hamas brokered by the United States. They want this conflict to continue. And they believe that if you stir it up in Jerusalem, then you can make that less likely.
But what's the end game? Is it just to continue with these conflicts, or is it actually to take over? I mean, we heard Fatah reporting about taking over Al-Aqsa, taking over land near Tulkarem. Is that what they want, to take over the entire region?
There's a segment of the Israeli Jewish population who certainly do want that. The sorts of settlers and settler groups, like, say, the Temple Mount Faithful, do wish to rebuild the temple on the site of Al-Aqsa. That is for certain, and they have plans. You go around the old city of Jerusalem, you see even pictures of this, of how they reimagine how the temple would look. So certainly for a certain portion of Israeli Jewish opinion, that is true. And of course, there's another strand, often overlapping, of course, who wish to secure all of what they refer to as Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, under Israeli sovereignty, and to settle it and to encourage Palestinians to leave. That is, a particular segment of Israeli opinion. There's other segments that agree in part with that, who encourage settlement building, but would understand that eventually there will have to be some form of nominal Palestinian sovereignty within these areas as well. You can't kick the Palestinians out. That would be another argument. And of course, there's another segment of the Israeli Jewish population who don't believe this at all, who object to the occupation, who certainly would not wish to inflame the situation by demolishing Al-Aqsa and rebuilding the temple. So there isn't one consistent viewpoint or one specific plan that they're all signed up to. But the one that does drive this, that we're seeing those settlers and extremists going up onto Al-Aqsa at the moment, is becoming more powerful, more potent within Israel. The settler movement itself is far more embedded in the Israeli political, military, economic system than ever before. Of course, there's 700,000 settlers today, some 57 years after the start of the occupation. And of course, you will now find settlers in government, in the Supreme Court, in military courts, etc., as very much a norm. And settlers are very much part and parcel of Israeli political life.
Is that why we're also seeing the old opinion about retaking Gaza, resettling Gaza, which used to be quite an extreme opinion, but nowadays people are expressing it out in the open in Israel?
This is true. There are those, including in government, in the coalition, like the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who certainly support the recolonization of Gaza. Just to remind viewers that until 2005, there were around about 9,000 Israeli settlers that took up about a third of the Gaza Strip. But I would say this is a smaller portion of that settler movement. The reason being is that the West Bank historically and biblically and for religious reasons, is really at the epicenter of that right-wing Zionist nationalist dream. This is where many of the biblical stories take place. Hebron, for example, in the West Bank, is a major city both for Islam but also Judaism. So that is really the major center of conflict. This is the land that they are particularly keen on securing for Israeli sovereignty. Gaza less so. And those settlers who were in Gaza prior to 2005 were largely there for economic reasons, potentially security reasons, but not necessarily ideologically motivated. So Gaza is less attractive, but there are people who do still wish to see it being retaken. Of course, it's a very lucrative piece of real estate on the Mediterranean. So if Gaza was emptied, as some of these right-wing fanatics like, of all its Palestinian population, then down the line, it could be an extremely attractive economic prospect.
Chris, another development that I just want to ask you about today. We've heard from Benjamin Netanyahu saying Israel is now prepared for very intense operations on the border with Lebanon. What's he expecting to happen up there on the border with Lebanon and sort of the fight with Hezbollah?
This is the key question. It's not at all clear, but we have seen, obviously, escalation of tensions day in, day out ever since the 7th of October. Hezbollah carried out an attack then, but these attacks between Israeli forces and Hezbollah have just got more regular, more potent. They have gone further into both Lebanese and to Israeli territory. And we have seen recently fires breaking out as a result of Hezbollah rocket attacks into northern Israel. The tensions are very high. We've seen, of course, large numbers, tens of thousands of Israelis having to be evacuated from northern Israel, and also Lebanese evacuated from southern Israel. Now, I don't think any right-thinking Israeli leader or Lebanese leader would want to see any conflict, because the cost of this would be enormous. One would not be able to even start to predict how bad it would get. We have seen one Israeli minister talk about taking Lebanon back to the Stone Age. I think we would see carnage, frankly, and it would, in addition to Gaza, really push the whole of the Middle East into an extremely dangerous war. So what we need to see now is the international community, those actors with influence, doing absolutely everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen, but also to secure that, to make sure that there is a proper, immediate, credible ceasefire in Gaza. Because unless you get that, you are not going to have peace and tranquility between Hezbollah and Israel. That's very clear. And you're not going to have any form of security within the Red Sea either.
Chris Doyle, a Middle East commentator. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time here on TRT World.
Pleasure.